This is an update to the Performative Design Daylight tool. This time I will be using Chrome as the browser to use the tool. In the same way as previously with Firefox, I'm going to zoom in to the screen a little bit so that you can see the buttons more clearly in the video. To get the latest version, if you remember from the last video, you go to the it's different here compared to Firefox, but similar process. You go to the advanced settings at the end and then clear browsing data. You clear the data and then you get the latest version once you reload this website. One thing I didn't talk about last time is how do you save a version of this model. So let's have this version. I'm going to click on one of the windows, press X to delete it. Then I go to here, save settings. I can leave the name as the default. It has a timestamp on it, or I can just type a random name. Save file, as you can see, it's been saved. And if I go to my downloads, it will be listed there as this, which is a JSON file. For example, if I take off a couple of windows, so the model is actually different now, and then I go back to here, drag the JSON file into this, it loads to whatever version I saved. So this is how you can save a version of your model as a JSON file. The JSON file will also include any data you have saved on the grid based on your calculations. Of course, you can drag the file in, or you can go load settings and then you can load it from there. In the next part of this video, I will be talking about adding obstructions, which is a new function of this tool. Based on the view that you currently have, let's say it's this one, if I go to this tool at the top left and then insert external obstruction or press U, it will add an obstruction here. You'll notice that there's a message coming up at the bottom left. It says that currently, based on the version of the tool that we have, if you want to get interactive updates based on the BRE split flags method, you cannot at the moment. The BRE split flags method that this tool is using is only valid for the box geometry that you see here. So any external obstructions will not update the results. So you get this error, this message coming up just to warn you of that. These external obstructions will be taken into account if you render with radiance on the cloud. So if you do it through here, this will be taken into account, or if you generate the DIVA files and calculate through DIVA. So I'll spend a few moments just to tell you how do you change the size of these boxes. So fairly straightforward. You just click on one of these arrows, change their dimension, or just click on one of these dimensions and just type it in, and it changes interactively. You can add more than one, so depending on which way your view is facing. So right now I'm facing this facade. If I click on this, insert external obstruction, I'll get another one here. If I'm facing obviously this facade, then I can add another obstruction here. In the same way that you delete a window, exactly the same way you can delete those boxes. So I'm just going to click on it and then press X on my keyboard. That deletes it. Click on it to select it, press X, and that's it. So this is how you do an external obstruction. For the moment it's just boxes, but you can add as many as you want, and that means once you add them next to each other, so let me add the second one, you can start to describe different heights of buildings right next to each other and so on. With radiance and with DIVA you can take this geometry into account. So I'll select and delete that, and this one too. In the next part, I will be talking about adding external shading. So if I zoom a little bit more in here, go to the same tool, insert external shading, the shading is added to the active facade. So if this is the facade I'm looking at, this is where the shading is being added. If I look into this facade, same tool, same command, insert external shading, that's also Y. I can do this. To modify the geometry, again, very straightforward. You click on it first. You can make it bigger, smaller, one direction or the other direction. You can also click on the dimension. Currently it's 1 meter. I can make it 1,500, so 1.5 meters. Take it back to 500, whatever size I like. And then make it wider. Again, I can click on all of these dimensions and change them. I can also drag the shading from this in front or attach it back to the facades, or I can click on this, brings it all the way down, click on that, can make it thicker, that's also possible. So all these options are possible. You just play around with them, you'll find the exact size that you're interested in. In the same way as the external obstructions, you will notice that even though I have a shading device here, another one there, the internal daylight levels don't change within the tool. This will happen, but in the future. For now, they don't update. If you calculate this scenario in on the cloud on Radiance, or also if you do it with a DIVA download and you run it through DIVA, these obstructions will be taken into account. So this is what is recommended at the moment. I've already, in the next section, I'm going to tell you how you visualize the results from this, exactly the same way as before. I've already run 2 calculations. I went through here, generate DIVA files, select a weather file by clicking on this, select a schedule. If you look at the other video, you'll see how to do that. And then you have to unzip the file that you get, go inside it, double click into the roomdiva.bat. It will run the calculations and you'll get the results back in. So I've done 2 calculations. So let's see how we visualize those results. First, I'm going to go for this one. Obviously, this calculation is not relating to this model. So to get a copy of that model, I'm just going to load the JSON file. So room.json, drag it in. This will load the simulation that I did previously. That model was this one. So it had a light shelf here, and same way as with the previous video, all the annual calculations, let's say daylight autonomy for example, I can just drag it in. There it is. That's my daylight autonomy calculation based on 300 lux. I can also go for UDI. Here it is, and so on. So I can do this, I can do another simulation with other light shelf and see the difference. Also, I did another calculation, which is in here. That was another export and so on. So I want to see the model that I exported, so I'll bring that in. That model was a little bit different. It didn't have any shading in front of the window, but it did have an external obstruction, as you can see this one. Again, I can look into all the annual metrics. Let's say I'm going to go for this one now and drag it in. I'm looking at UDI 2000, and I can drag all the rest of them inside as well. In this following section, I want to show you a new button within the tool, which is at the bottom right of the interface. It's right here. It's the weather chart tool. Currently, it doesn't display anything, but as soon as I drag a file in, it will, and you're going to see the results accordingly. I'm going to also click on the sky distribution. So if I drag something I have calculated previously, and I go to the JSON file, drag it in, is this model. What I can do is, next to this, drag the illuminance file, so roomdiva.ill. That will give me the yearly illuminance per hour for this particular model. It takes a while to load, but it's all in. And then on top of this, what I can do is click on the WEA file, which is the weather file that DIVA is using, and drag that inside, then what I see at the top left under sky distribution, if I click on this button, I get to see that this is using sky distribution based on the weather file that I have. I can click on the button at the new button at the bottom right, and I can see that I have direct and diffuse radiation. I can change the date and time of it, and as I change it, I get to see for every single day what is the direct and diffuse radiation, the same way you would visualize a weather file. At the same time, while this is happening, the sky distribution model at the top left is updating. I could go here at the top right and change the time, so that updates interactively. And while I'm doing this, if I look at this in plan view and zoom in a little bit, I get to see the lux levels calculated for every single hour for that period, and then displayed also. I can also do that from here by using this vertical line for this particular day and time. I get to shift through it. I can select another day when it's predominantly overcast, or just overcast, like here. I get to see the sky distribution there. I change the time from here. The lux levels update. The scale is quite big though, it's from 0 to 70,000, so that's why I'm not really visualizing much. I can change that. If I go into here and I go to legend, I might decide to have less and then go down to 5 here, and therefore I can see it. And as I cycle through this particular day, I get to see the variation on that day. As you can appreciate, while I cycle through the year, depending on whether it is cloudy or sunny, the lux levels will vary dramatically, and therefore the scale might be appropriate, might be not. You will have to update the scale manually in that case. The variation is too big. Here I can see, based on this WEA file that I loaded, I can see direct and diffuse radiation. There's another two data points, cloud cover and external temperature. These are not displayed for the moment. The reason is because the WEA file does not contain such data. If you want to see them, you'll have to remember what location your project is in. Then you go to the DIVA folder on your C drive, and then DIVA, and then weather data. I did this calculation based on the Vienna weather file. So it's WEA, that's not what I want. I want the EPW, that's the Energy Plus weather file. I'll just drag that inside. You'll notice that the exact same in time, date and time, the data is displayed exactly the same because it is based on the same file. But in addition, I get two extra data streams. I get the cloud cover, which is this gray line, and that's based on the weather file, of course, and then also the external temperature. So if you want more layers of information to display on this, purely because you're doing other types of analysis as well, you can include all of that as well. And as you cycle through it by day and by hour, you get to display the yearly illuminances on top. I hope this was useful.